It's time for those Friday Night Lights party people with some Countdown to Classic. This is a podcast that educates, informs, and gossips about World of Warcraft Classic. Each week we discuss the news, hot button issues, and content of the highly anticipated World of Warcraft Classic. I'm your host, Josh Corbett, and as you all know by now, this is a show where it's not my opinion on World of Warcraft that counts, but yours. If you're new to the show, Countdown to Classic goes through your expert input on everything relating to the sure-to-be-amazing World of Warcraft Classic. Today, we get a little holier than thou as we discuss everything Holy Priests with listener and previous caller Boradin as we get through the show's first ever spec-focused interview, which was a lot of fun. After that, we'll have two calls for Calling Countdown, all about changes and part 2 of Love Stories in Azeroth. Now, if you're a fan of the show and you'd like the chance to voice your opinion about vanilla World of Warcraft to the world via a quick call on the show, then please do reach out to me via the show's amazing Discord or on Twitter at Count2Classic with the number 2, or email me at feedback@countdowntoclassic.com. You'll find all those links in the show notes for each episode. Also, if you happen to be listening to this on release day, being Friday, July 21, 2018, then please do tune into my Twitch channel this weekend for a couple of very special events. Firstly, tonight, Friday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, that's tonight, tune into the great debate brought to you by Countdown to Classic. Changes versus no changes. 3-on-3. High school rules debating, moderated by yours truly, as we have a little bit of fun and settle that argument once and for all. Then, the following night, Saturday, July 22nd, at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, tune back in to Twitch for a special stream with the Cinephiles, my other podcast, where we conduct a live comedy commentary of Return of the Jedi. So fire up the movie, being the 1997 special edition release, hit play when we do, and watch and laugh along as we not only crack wise during the movie, but also touch on a few thoughts you may not have heard about Return of the Jedi and the state of the Star Wars franchise in general. So we hope to see as many of you there as possible for those two special events over at twitch.tv/Countdown to Classic. And please do feel free to throw me a follow at Twitch if you happen to like what you see. If you're listening to this after that weekend, then head over to Twitch anyway and look for the VODs, as they may well still be up there. But back to this episode of Countdown for now, and let's get holy with Boradin in today's in-depth interview. Hello and a huge Countdown to Classic welcome to Boradin. How are you?
I'm all good, mate.
Excellent. Hey, was that a bit of an Aussie accent there?
I tried and I failed, but I can live with that. It's fine.
No, I love it. That's fantastic. Excellent. All right. Well, just to let the listeners clue them in a little bit on what we're going to be talking about today and how this interview came to be. Obviously, we spoke recently on a group call with Venustus about a couple of epic items in the game, such as Rock Delar and also Benediction/Anathema. And you mentioned during that chat that you'd had quite a bit of time with priests, namely holy priests. And so you put your hand up to me to say that, hey, Josh, I'd be more than happy to be the person that you interview about holy priests. Isn't that right? So you're a bit of a holy priest veteran.
Yeah, that's correct.
Fantastic. All right. Well, as we do here on Countdown to Classic during these interviews, let's tear through your WoW resume a little bit and let people know a bit more about you and your experience with the game. So you ready for this one?
Sure.
Okay. Question number 1. With as much specificity as you're comfortable with, where in the world are you from?
From Halland County in Sweden.
And how long have you played World of Warcraft?
I've played the retail game on and off from can't even remember. It was the tail end of Classic, and I had a few breaks in Cataclysm and in Warlords of Draenor, and I also don't play currently, but I've played since on and off since the tail end of Classic.
And what was your original main character's name?
His name was Thorias. He was a troll mage.
Did you hit a level cap with that original character? And what other classes have you hit a level cap with?
I did not back in the day. I was 14. I was really bad at the game back then, and I have since gotten... I got a lot of characters up to 70, and then I kept leveling them through the expansions. So I think I have about 8 or so characters at level 100, and which is not the max level. It's the maximum level for Wolves of Draenor, and I have about 4 or so at 110.
Okay, which server did you play on when you started?
I played on Eonar PvE.
And do you prefer those PvE servers or do you prefer PvP?
I'd have to go for PvP, actually.
Now, what was your highest raid experience, if any, in vanilla, or what's been your highest raid experience post-vanilla?
So, yeah, back in the day in Classic Vanilla, I had no raiding experience. I was dumb and oblivious and just curious at the game back then, and I didn't do anything. I just, as I said, I started in the tail end of Classic, so I was about level 45 or something, I think, when Bring Crusade hit. But I've taken that time on private servers later to raid almost every content so far. The only thing I haven't killed so far is no, I did kill Vicidius. I haven't killed Cthulhu. That's about it.
Okay. Now, you mentioned you're not currently playing World of Warcraft. Is that the case?
Yep.
Okay.
I did go back to dabble in the Blizzard had a free weekend where you could play for free for a weekend coming back, but that's about it.
So you're generally just saving yourself for Classic. Is that the case at the moment?
It's more like I'm playing Classic and kind of actually tying myself out on it, unfortunately. But I would like to say that I am saving myself for Classic, yeah.
Okay, no problems. Now, do you have a quick plug for any places online where people can find you? Do you do anything, any work anywhere where people might want to check out?
I do and I don't. Thing is, I do record or live stream the raids that I do on my Priest on YouTube. It's youtube.com/TheDoubleP. But they're very far in between because, I mean, sometimes you're on the bench, you start on the bench and you don't record. But when there are raids there, I will record them and put them on YouTube.
Okay, complete this sentence so we know where your allegiances lie. For the
Horde.
Okay, excellent. Here we go. Now, we didn't really cover off on this during that initial resume bit just at the start there, but just to get into the interview and the crux of these questions that I've got for you regarding Holy Priest, how much time would you say you spent playing Holy Priest, whether it's as a percentage of your total WoW time or recently in terms of time in hours or days played? How would you describe it?
I would say that I have played, I think it's about 45 days at this point of playtime.
Out of interest, did you level as Shadow and then convert to Holy as people normally do, or did you do the grind of leveling as Holy? Have you done that before?
I have not, because that is suicide. I did something similar with when I level a Shaman. I did level as Elemental all the way, but I did not do that with Priest. I was not crazy enough to do that. I did, however, try some things. Leveling as a Priest is basically the same thing in lower levels. You just pick Spirit Tap and you wand your way to victory. That's about the first 30 levels or so, even 40 levels. of gameplay. So yeah, but after that I tried, I did spec into Shadow, but then at 50, because I had a little problem with mana, so it was a lot of downtime during that time, and I didn't like downtime. So one guy we were talking about something, and we came across a Holy Smite spec. So I tried that for the last 10 levels or so.
With Holy, basically that spec that we're going to be focusing on just for this interview, what is it that truly made you fall in love with being a holy priest over your other options?
I mean, if you look at it this way, all healing classes have their own unique set of utility, right? And I think that priests just happened to have the utility that matched my play style a little bit more than the other, I think. It was like you didn't know it, but when you did put that glove on your hand, it just fit perfectly.
Well, you mentioned that keyword of utility. And my next question would be sort of straight up, holy priests, we hear they are bar none the best healer in the game, and often people cite their utility in terms of the number of spells that they have at their disposal. Do you think it is easily just a cut and dry answer, best healer, holy priest, done? Or do you think there's a little bit more to it, and why?
Absolutely not. There's a lot of things that the priest can do. All the things you can do, I can do better. That's the paladin. The paladin is a little bit more mana efficient than the priest. And I usually get out-healed by paladins. Back in the Blackwing Lair days, when that was the most current content, I was pretty high up there on the lists, but they were always the paladins. They were always a little bit higher. I don't play a paladin myself, so I can't really say why, but I think they're probably a bit more mana efficient than priests, fortunately.
Okay, so outside of that, is there anything about Holy that people don't already know that they might discover upon spending a lot of time with the spec?
That's the thing. You mentioned that, you mentioned the specific specs, but there's so much more to it, because you don't have to pursue just one spec. Holy is, healing priest, you could say, is actually most efficient when you mix a little bit of holy and discipline.
Excellent. Yes, very good. Well, we might as well touch on that now. I'll bump these questions up the order. Now, in terms of specs, obviously, perhaps some new players, perhaps some people who aren't necessarily veterans of World of Warcraft vanilla, when they think of holy priests, they might just presume, someone like me might go, well, do you just dump all your points in holy? But you've said no, it's actually best when there's a little bit of a mixture. In terms of priests, exactly. What's the spec that you like to roll with?
There's a lot of things to think about. In the beginning, when you just hit 60, you're going to have a hard time because you don't have the plus healing gear to kind of make efficient healing, right? So you're going to have to sacrifice some healing for some mana, right? There's a talent in the holy tree that called spiritual healing, which increases the amount healed by your healing spell by 10%. You don't want that in the beginning because you want to have mana enough and not run all the time. So you're going to have to pick mental strength, which increases your mana by 10% when maxed out, of course. But generally, the spec is pretty straightforward. You just want in the holy tree, there's the two key talents are spiritual guidance and spiritual healing. You want those two. Spiritual guidance increases your spell damage and healing up to 25% of your total spirit. And that's a lot when you have a few set pieces which give a lot of stats like tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Tier 1 is not good, but yeah, if you're at that point of the progression, then it's fine. They're better stuff out there for most of those, but yeah. But the tier pieces give a lot of stats. I mean, I have my character up actually for this, and I have my tier 2 headpiece, which gives 17 stamina, 27 intellect, and 22 spirit. Imagine if you have a few of those items and you get 25% healing on your spirit. That's very quickly going to amount to a lot.
Keep
you
going.
also want the Divine Spirit buff, which is in the Discipline tree, which is a buff you can cast on your party, which increases their spirit by 40. And all of those pieces really amount to a lot. There's also some key things like the meditation. You get 15% mana regeneration while casting, which is huge for really making it as a bit smoother for yourself when I'm obviously talking about rating here, but there's a lot of things that makes things smoother in the talents. So you can it makes it a lot easier for you. Let's just say that.
The spec that you run, is it basically, I'm being a bit unfamiliar with it myself, do you run something like a 3120 holy discipline?
It all depends on kind of what content you're doing as well. There are also a spec when you actually dump those 2 key talents that I just mentioned for power infusion. Now, and that's the power infusion spec. I don't recommend doing that. Power infusion, for you who don't know, is you infuse the target with 20% spell power and healing for 15 seconds, which is really good. You usually use that to boost a DPS in a very long fight in raiding, but I don't really recommend doing that too often. There's some fights that it's good, like Cthulhu, but other than that, I don't recommend that.
Yep.
What I usually recommend is doing the deep holy, so to say, spec, where you go for a few baseline talents and Divine Fury to make your paths a little bit faster, and then improve healing and just spiritual guidance and spiritual healing. Those are 2 key spells, talents, I mean.
Okay, so you mentioned a few talents, obviously, that people want to start investing their points in, but without really knowing what goes where, and I should say that I'm going to be playing a Holy Priest in Classic, so I'm actually rather invested in what you're going to be saying here, but is it a 31-20 split Holy Discipline, or how is it? And basically, on top of that, is there any argument whatsoever to not do a split between Holy and Discipline and for some reason just dump everything in Holy? Is that just absolutely ridiculous?
Yeah, that's not really something I could recommend. I mean, a lot of the other talents in the Holy Tree, for example, are spell damage reduction. A heal over time after being critically hit, which is not going to help you at all because you're not taking that much damage. Improvements on smite and all that stuff, and you don't need that as a healer. Kind of useless. That's why you jump to discipline tree, where you actually get the other good healing talents.
You mentioned another couple of things during your previous answers, such as, plus healing. I just want to take you through a post I found, and I found this over at the old Nostarius website, and it said the following. And it goes through the spell coefficient numbers, obviously saying, things like Prayer of Healing, 0.286, Power Word Shield, 0.1, Greater Heal, 0.857, Flash Heal, 0.433, Holy Nova, 0.114, Renew 1, Heal, 0.857. And they go on to say this, the coefficients explained. All of the spells that you will use benefit differently from your plus healing. For example, if you equipped a piece of gear that gives plus 10 healing and you then used a flash heal, you don't get plus 10 extra healing on your flash heal. You get plus 4.3 healing. But if you cast a renew, you would get plus 10 extra healing divided over the course of the hot. The reason this is important to know is because as your gear improves, you will want to downrank your spells. This is why plus healing is so strong a stat for us, being holy priests. Now, my question for you is, you mentioned already this plus healing stat that you probably want to see on your gear. Tell me why, if so, it is clearly the number one thing that you want to be chasing with your gear.
Yeah, it absolutely is the one thing you want to chase down the most, especially when you just hit 60 and you want to gear up. The thing is that even though the coefficiencies might not be the exact same for all the healing spells, and yes, you mentioned downranking, which is really important. If you downrank, you automatically make your spells cost less, right? But the amount you heal is still the same. Now add plus 10 healing to that, or plus 4 healing to that. When you get a bit more gear, all that will mount up to a mountain of healing. So usually there's a coefficient which takes in consideration level, spell rank, and all that, which makes rank 2 the most efficient healing you could always have at when you have enough healing to downrank, that is. So what you do is you downrank to rank 2, if you have enough healing, and you raise your plus healing. That's about it. That's the way to go. So yeah, I mean, the thing about it is the plus healing it gives might not be the exact same coefficient, but it's still super strong, especially combined with the downranking.
In terms of operating a holy priest, and you've mentioned this slightly already, you seem to have a lot of spells in the old utility belt. The holy priest just has a lot of different options. My question is mainly, if I'm considering playing a holy priest, how do you remember them all? Do you have like flow charts at home of when to use what, or is it really that you're only using perhaps a handful most of the time?
I mean, yeah, I could mention a few that you only mention and that you only use a few times. I mean, there's Solgarob, where you use a lot of mind control. There's a few instances before Maril, the spider boss, where priest is used to mind control. In Nax, mind control is also present. Resuvius. There is Shackle Undead, very good in Naxxramas. I mean, you have all those kind of spells. I mean, you have Fade, which is really good for if you get aggro or something, or tank dies, or, well, hopefully not, but you can kind of make them mobs not attack you, which is really good. Just that a lot. There's Desperate Prayer, which is also, it's a self-heal that heals for about 2,000 to 2.2k healing on a 10-minute cooldown. It's only a self-heal, so that's really good. Mana Burn, used a lot in Encourage, AQ20 to be exact. All these kind of like these spells that you don't use in your rotation, but you still use them in very specific circumstances, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the whole what race should I pick as a priest debacle, right? That's the whole thing. I got the stone form as I play a dwarf, so I can remove poison, disease, and bleeds, which is really huge on something like, let's say, for example, the Sidious in AQ40. And of course, since I'm a priest, I also got Fear Ward, which is a huge kind of carrot for picking dwarf.
One question I've got flowing on from being a priest in general is this. Now, what's the average time I can expect to wait for a reply when I type into, the chat, lonely healer, LFGT, which I would say is looking for a good time? How long do you wait for a group as a holy priest?
The amount of time you have to wait for a group depends on a lot of factors. It depends on where are you playing, what is the population like, and, well, is it a private server? We're hopefully talking about like retail classic, and we don't know enough about retail classic yet to know if they're gonna separate. They are gonna separate us by region, but are they gonna separate us by how many servers? How many people are gonna play? We don't know, which means we can't really calculate that. But you shouldn't, if you're on a like medium pop server at least, which is like, let's say 3,500, you shouldn't have to wait more than 5 minutes.
Well, that's the thing. You can expect to be very popular basically as a holy priest, can't you?
I mean, as I said, it all depends on the population. If there's a lot of people, let's say double what I said, then there's a lot of healers. There's a lot of competition. The only thing that actually is constantly in need, that's tanks. But as a healer, you have a little bit more competition about the spots.
In terms of gearing up a priest, if you dinged 60, you want to get your best in slot gear, you want to then get to your raid gear and stuff like that with your guilds, you want to get to tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, all that stuff. I just want to read you the following quote about a forum thread that I found regarding the easiest class to gear up in the game. And the answer was this from user Varna over at the official forums, who said, protection warrior and holy priest, because they're always in high demand. And when people realize you're good, you can get away with murder. Now, my question is that what it's like gearing up a holy priest when you raid with your guild? Are you always just going to be the pretty much, besides the tank, the first one to get all your awesome gear?
A lot of if you're talking about raiding, are you talking about raiding or previous here? Because you kind of jump from one to the other.
Let's say with raiding, because obviously with pre-bis gear, you might be doing that not with the guild, and it might still be obviously a little bit different. But with your guild, if certain things drop, could you assume that it's likely going, if it's cloth, it's going to the holy priest?
No, I would not say that at all. There's a lot of things that are, a lot of items throughout the raid content that is good for all of the healing classes. I mean, gear such as tier gear, of course, it's gonna go to holy priest because it's a priest only set piece. But I mean, there's like often rings and stuff like that are really hard to get because they have a kind of lower drop chance and they are sought after by all the healers. Cost Rising Band in the Molten Core, a Rejuvenation Gem, and Pure Elementation Band in Blackwing Lair. And that's just the first 2 tiers of rating. So there are definitely things that you can expect to get, tier pieces, and there's stuff you don't have a big chance of getting at all, which is these more sought after items, which all the classes can benefit from.
Just going through the leveling process, and we talk about running 5-mans, let's say not with guild members, just with guild members or with randoms. Either way, you find yourself in all the dungeons going through the journey from 1 to 60. Just talking about holy mechanics, and let's presume you are, this applies to holy or shadow priest or whatever kind of priest, but let's presume for the purposes of the exercise that you're a holy. It doesn't really matter either way, but little things that I want to ask in terms of, with all your experience, mechanics like, let's say power word shields and renew. When should I be popping these spells? I made the mistake of thinking that when I dabbled with healers running from 1 to 20, I'd just pop a renew on at the start of the fight. And I've since learned that that's a very, very bad thing to do because of aggro and stuff like that. When do you pop your first renew? When do you save a power word shield for? What do you do when you're running 5-mans on the journey to 60?
You usually never power word shield a tank unless it's anything other than warrior, because warriors don't generate threat through the shield, so they can't get rage, they can't get cast their spells, they can't gain aggro. So you don't want to power shield a warrior ever. I did that mistake in the beginning when I was learning the class as well, but I've since learned that that's a really dumb thing to do. As far as renew goes, you basically just have to wait a few seconds. It depends on the tank as well. How much aggro do they generate? If they're a high threat tank, you could wait like 3 seconds or so. Otherwise, maybe 5. You never put a renew on before the tank has pull, because that is what's gonna regenerate aggro and likely get you killed. That also applies later on when you do have gear and you're raiding. You don't want to do that still. It can still get you aggro and it can still kill you.
Now, in terms of renew, another thing that I've since come to learn doing a little bit of research for this interview is that I always thought renew was a really great mana efficient spell, and apparently that might not be the case at all. Is that true?
I mean, it's really good for what it does. I mean, in the beginning, probably not that much, but depending on what gear you have, you can afford to use it from time to time. Especially, I mean, my priest, which is in crap ton of different gear, some tier 3, some off pieces, and some tier 2 gear. I have 6.1k mana. Now, a max rank renew is 319 mana, and that heals for 150 healing per second. So I can afford to pop one of. I usually don't use the high renews on DPS. You just use the high rank renews on tanks, and then I use a rank 3 renew on the DPS, which is more than enough to keep them stable. And that also reduces downranking also reduces the cost of the spell, so it doesn't have to be useless or so. It can be used, but use it sparingly if you don't have the gear for it, if you don't have the healing to downrank. Once you get up there, you can start using it a little bit more.
Here's a question for you that you might not know, or unless you've got an anecdotal story to share with us, but you said that you haven't leveled as holy before, and one thing I've always kind of wondered is that I know very few people have leveled as holy, but the old info or advice is don't worry about going as holy when you're going to 60. You can just level as shadow, and healing a 5-man dungeon on the way to 60 as shadow is perfectly fine. The one question I have is, if I did heal a 5-man dungeon going through the content on the journey to 60 as a holy priest, would that make it a little bit of a face roll or not so much?
It wouldn't be much of a difference, actually, because, I mean, you don't get the plus healing gear until level, say, 40 or something. I mean, it's kind of late, and all the healing you do before then are just going to be, you're just going to mostly be in stack gear. That's not going to change anything for you. You're just going to have more mana, more health, a little bit more crit from the int, but that's about it. Hopefully you have a lot of spirit as well, because spirit is good for solo content if you want to do some quests and farm some mobs and stuff. That's really good. It's not going to do that much of a difference, which is why you can just get away with healing as a shadow spec with a few healing if you want to talents. if you really want to go the holy route. But I wouldn't really recommend it, actually. No one can actually really identify you as a shadow priest. That's the good thing about vanilla. I mean, you can actually level as shadow up to, let's say, level 30. You don't have anything that makes you look like a shadow priest per se. You have a lot of stack gear. You have a few talents, which is helping your shadow spells. And the healing spells are still good enough to make a good run. You should be able to heal through most of the contents.
In terms of, we talked about the concept of downranking earlier, and you walked us through a few spells. But if I were to ask you, basically, let's say you're in a raid, you're going through Molten Core with your guild. Realistically, what ranks of what spells am I probably going to be casting the most? What's the most spell-efficient heal that I'm really going to be leaning on a lot?
The thing about that is that the easiest thing to do that is trial and error. It's easy to say that this is the thing you should do and this is the thing you should do, but when it comes to that, I mean, there's a lot of things like you, the player, to take into consideration, right? I mean, we all have different, even if we all play holy priests or healing priests, like I want to call them healing priests because they're not actually full holy. But yeah, we're all different people. We all have different play styles. So I say, try it out. Depending on how much healing you have, you can try it and you can say, no, if I use this rank, it takes too much mana. It's not effective. I need to rank up. Okay, fine. This spell, it could do more healing. I could probably downrank that one more time if I want. Okay, there you go. And that's, I think, the key way to do it. Because we're all different. We all have different play styles. We all have different gear. And we should just, there's no baseline for it. You just have to kind of try it out.
Now, there's one particular spell that I want to ask you about, and I'm going to read you this post from over at the Nostalrius forums again from a user called Garfunkel, who says this. I was under the assumption that Lightwell is pretty much useless in any and every context, so I'd take that point and put it into Divine Fury to shorten casting times. Same with the 1 point in Blessed Recovery, as half a second quicker greater heal sounds more useful than 6 seconds self-heal over times that after a critical hit that only heals 8%. But I haven't rated as a priest, so I could easily be mistaken. So my question for you from that post is about Lightwell, and I was always of the impression, and tell me if I'm way off base, that there was a little bit of a love-hate relationship between priests and Lightwell. What do you have to say about that?
I think that Lightwell is, there's no other way to see it. It's just horrible. You shouldn't use it. Please don't use it. It's not worth it. It's a stationary Lightwell that your party members has to move over and click. It's not effective. It's not good at all. You shouldn't be using it, please.
Okay, very good, very good. Now, here's another thing I wonder, and this applies obviously to raids and dungeons. What do you have to say about wand use in dungeons? Should you always have them out just wanding away, or how do you generally do it?
Again, there's a lot of factors to retain there, because, I mean, as a healer, probably you should not do that. I mean, it's good to help the others and all, but I personally usually like to stay focused on what I'm doing. Unless, I mean, you're with your tier 3 tank and you're clearing Diagonal North for tribute buffs, but I mean, that's another thing. That's a totally different thing. But if you're in a dungeon and you're trying to get through a dungeon or something, you should probably, I mean, I personally like to just focus on the task. But again, we're all different. I mean, your focus should be on healing the group.
Okay, well, let's say I'm the most focused player in the world and I can do a million things at once and it's no problem. However, is there any excuse whatsoever, mana-wise, for firing off a damage spell here and there in a dungeon or a raid?
Yeah, it all depends on how it's looking. I mean, I'd lie if I say I haven't done that before. But if the group's looking okay, and I mean, it's been looking okay for the last 10 minutes, and the tank's been easy enough to heal. I mean, sure, do a smite, do some wanding. I mean, it's not the end of the world, but I mean, your focus should be, in the end, on the group and keeping them alive.
Tell me, what's your experience with? Do you have much knowledge of the concept of holy weaving? Have you heard this term before?
Ooh, that does sound familiar, but I cannot place it.
Okay, that's right. I won't press you on it then. It's basically the concept of, there's an argument out there, that the private server players have been playing with over the last couple of years, which is basically dispensing with the need for a straight up, and if I get this wording wrong, please, priests, do come after me, but to paraphrase, it's basically getting rid of the need of a deep shadow priest and having a holy priest still just pick up shadow weaving, but still stick everything else in holy, and acts as a holy healer, but they have shadow weaving too, so you still get the effect there. Have you heard about this at all?
Oh yeah. It all comes back to me now. Yeah, of course, I've heard that. I am personally not a fan of that. I mean, sure, it'll help your shadow priests, but you usually don't run more than one of those anyway. And sure, you have the warlocks, but I've played a warlock as well, and they usually have a lot of trouble with over-aggroing in raid content because their spells do a lot more threat-like than, like, say, a mage. So even if they do more damage, they're still generating threat, so they can't really go all out anyway. So I'm personally not a fan of it. I prefer to have a few healing priests to make up and actually keep the group alive. I think that route is more successful most of the times than the shadow weaving path.
Okay, so I just want to go back to asking you about some of the ways in which you heal when you are running a dungeon or a raid. Now, I've seen obviously a lot of people argue for the mechanic of when you're playing your holy priest, some people always generally will have a greater heal rolling, and then they'll just cancel the heal and keep an eye on situationally what they might need. Do you sit back and just wait and cast heals as they need to come, or do you keep that greater heal rolling and either just let it go if it needs to go to the tank, or just sit there and cancel so that you've always kind of got something going, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, you're talking about the concept of pre-casting.
Yes.
And yeah, I do that. I try to do that as often as I can. Of course, if there's being a lot of damage handed out, I don't have the time to precast because everyone's already low in health, if that's a thing. It all depends on where we are again. But yeah, I do try to precast as often as I can, and it often comes down to a snipe war, so to speak, in the guild. Where the person who has if it's really quiet and there's really not much to heal, is usually kind of all try and snipe the tank to get some healing in and kind of climb the meters,
Mm-hmm.
climb the healing meters.
Mm-hmm.
So we're all kind of pre-casting on the person we think could take damage the next time. It's like it becomes more of a. This is usually a thing that becomes more relevant when you get a lot of gear, because if all the healers have good gear, then you just kind of sit there and try and snipe each other's heals.
Now, you just mentioned healing meters, and this was an interesting one that I wanted to ask you about. And I've spoken about this in the past with Def Camp and Melderon in the healing episode about, the way in which people approach healing meters and their mentality. For you personally, or maybe you could speak for, priests in general if you like, what do you think of the competition on healing meters? Do you think it's as vicious as the DPS competition, or do you gun for that number one slot? Do you hate it when you overheal because it might affect your the way in which the guild thinks of you, or how does it all work from healer to healer?
Yeah, very much. Yeah, I think about it a lot, and I try to be very competitive when it comes to healing meters, because that's a personal thing that I do, because I have kind of low self-esteem, and I try and make it up by making the guilds kind of like me by trying to pad the meter,
yeah, I understand,
so to speak, and try to snipe a few heals here and there, and try and climb to make the guild kind of love me more. So yeah. That is a real thing. And I myself, I'm probably a bit too competitive when it comes to that. I mean, if the raid's alive, that's good. I mean, I've done my job. But yeah, I'm a bit too invested in trying to make myself loved by making that extra few heals. Yeah.
I just take you to another quote just in regards to farming as a holy priest. When, obviously, let's say you're between raids and you want to go farming for a little while as a sexy holy priest, as a 60 holy priest, and maybe a sexy holy priest, who knows? But let's,
why not?
Yeah, exactly. So I'll read you. Yeah, exactly. I'll read you this post from Riggs 1992 over at the WoW Classic subreddit, who says this: I played vanilla back in the days. I never hit 60 before the Burning Crusade launched though. But I'm wondering, since I can't recall from the Burning Crusade even, how was farming stuff as, say, a holy priest or a holy paladin or a protection warrior? I want to roll holy priest, but I'm afraid of farming stuff. I know that I'll need to respec, but I don't want to do that if it's going to be a freaking hassle to respec to DPS. Can someone please give me some insights? So my question to you, Boradin, is when you are farming in between raids, is it an absolute hassle? Is it possible? I mean, I know anything's possible, but is it ridiculous as a holy priest to try and go farming? Do you have to respec to shadow? How do you do it?
I mean, yeah, it's absolutely possible, but I'm sorry to disappoint you, whoever wrote that post. It's gonna be tough. It's not easy. Respecking is not really a thing for farming, because, I mean, the gold cost of that, it's just gonna be insane after a while. So at that point, it would probably be better just to buy things you need to farm on the auction house. So yeah, you probably gonna farm as a healer in your healing spec, using a few spells, power shield, and your wand. That's usually how it goes. That's how I've done my farming. It works, but it's not easy. It does take a little bit more time than other DPS classes do, but it does work. It's just a little bit tougher.
Have you done much PvP as a holy priest?
I have done a fair bit of PvP as a holy priest, yeah.
Excellent. Then these are okay. Have you what rank have you gotten up to? Do you know what kind of achievements have you made as a holy priest in PvP?
I mean, I'm not a very big PvPer, so for most of you, this is going to sound really dumb, because I've done some, which is really it's really open. I've gotten to like I think it was rank 5 or something out of 14, so it's not that much, but it's just require a little bit of time to get that rank. It's not something you get in a day.
No, sure, I understand.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll still absolutely ask you, appreciating that you're not, quite the rank 14 ranker or anything like that, but you've dabbled a little bit in Holy Priest PvP. I'll just read you the following post from the official forums from Axebreaker, who says this. I didn't PvP as a healer in vanilla, so I don't know how they performed. But back before every class and its dog got a self-heal and sustain talents, healers could wear down attackers if they played smart. How did that dynamic work in vanilla? So my question is, if someone came at you one-on-one as a holy priest, is it something that you could, as a bit of a war of attrition, wear them down and easily come out on top, or were you kind of screwed?
Yeah, you only have a few things to defend yourself with. You have the power word shield. You have Psychic Scream, which fears your enemies. And you have your self-heal in Desperate Prayer. Sorry, Desperate Prayer. Okay. That's kind of the only things you have. And if you, like me, play as a dwarf priest alliance, the undead have their racial, which basically just make them immune to fear, so they could just use that, and you're kind of screwed. So undead rogues are kind of a pain in the beehole to
sure
make your enemy.
Okay.
Warriors, they just hamstring you, and you can't really move at all. I mean, you move at like very reduced speed, so you're pretty much done for. Mage, they just, since we're at 1.1.2 patch progression, content progression as well. Mages just obliterate you. Warlocks too. It's not much to do actually. You're pretty much dead. It all depends on how good your enemies are. If your enemies aren't good enough to notice you always try to stay away from the mages. Sometimes they just want to polymorph you and just get rid of you as a whole. And sometimes they just want to blow you up, and you just need to stay away from them. You don't have to engage in much combat per se. The tip from me is just to kind of stay out of your enemy's sights and hope they're not good enough to come after you. If you have a warrior charging after you, you're dead. Unless you have really good teammates that actually help peel them off you, which is so far has not been a very successful thing. The private service, at least.
Just one last post from the forums, and this is another one from the official forums from a user named Ella Lane, and they say this. A discipline/holy priest will always eat a shadow priest for lunch, barring real luck on blackout procs in terms of PvP. Do you agree with that?
No. How is that even possible? No. You don't have that much offensive capabilities as a discipline/holy priest. I would say that it would always go the other way around. You just get like Mind Blasted, Shadow Word Pain, Fear, Mind Flay, and you're dead.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much. That's usually how it goes. Sometimes they get in like 2 Mind Flays, but you're still dead. I would probably say that you're definitely dead as a holy priest, as a disciplined priest, any kind of DPS.
I thought that might get that response. Yeah, sorry, keep going.
Yeah, unless you're a really under-geared DPS, in which case, maybe you could just, I'll heal it, but you're not going to win.
No, I thought I might get that response out of you just because I know that Shadow Priests are generally regarded as sort of one of the top 3 one-on-one PvP classes in the game. So I was a bit surprised by that comment. So it's good that you confirmed my suspicions there that it's quite wrong, maybe. Okay, moving on.
If you want to challenge, you should absolutely do Shadow Priest if you want to challenge in PvP. That's absolutely a thing that you should do.
Yeah, no, for sure. Moving on just to add-ons very quickly. Are there any add-ons that you use that you anything off the beaten track that you say Holy Priest should absolutely look into trying?
I mean, I use so many add-ons. I can barely keep track of them anymore. You have your raiding add-ons, you have some gathering add-ons. There's so many things. There's the outfitter add-on, which can quickly switch your item sets from, let's say, if you have a resistance gear to your normal loadout. If you have a plus healing or a somewhat of a more sustainable set for longer healing. I mean, that's great. I love that. If you need to just equip you don't have to click all your gear one by one. You can just click a button and you can just change your loadout. That's pretty handy. But yeah, other than that, it's just your usual raid type add-ons, some kind of action bar add-ons, your normal KTM or threat meter add-on, and a healing meter add-on, of course. And no, it's mostly like UI stuff. No, yeah, but that's about it. It's mostly like interface, your normal raid add-ons, some life improvement add-ons like the outfitter that I just talked about. Nothing healing specific per se.
What would you say is the hardest encounter in the game to heal as a holy priest?
I'd have to say in the AQ 40, there's the boss, Balgard Satura. And that boss is a pain in the a-hole because there's 3 different bugs that run around randomly in different directions, and they do this spinny thing as they run around. So it kind of becomes you have to run around, stop, heal a little bit, and hope that you don't get one of those mobs. There's 2 mobs in the boss walking in your direction and spinning, because it only takes like 2 spins and you're dead. So yeah, you constantly need to be moving and heal at the same time, which is really hard because you can't cast spells while you're moving, obviously. So it becomes a kind of a balance you need to take between having to stop and heal and kind of keep out of dodge, you know?
My last question before we get to the fun stuff is this, and this is personal for me because, as I said, I'm thinking of playing I'm pretty much committed to playing a Holy Priest for when Classic comes out. And having never played a healer class before, this is the one thing I'd love to hear from you as a veteran of the Holy Priest class. Now, once you are, running 5-man successfully, you are running raids successfully, and you've got all of these UI windows and things in you're clogging up your GUI and stuff like that. How do you deal with the whack-a-mole syndrome? Do you feel that healers are still fun to play, regardless of the fact that you're at times just staring at a bunch of bars going up and down? Or do you feel that you still do get to actually pay attention to the encounter and enjoy what Blizzard has created for us as a Holy Priest?
Yeah, I do. I mean, you're just experiencing it in another way from the other people. I mean, the melee, they're in there and they have to watch out for the kind of like aerial cleave attacks and the AoE abilities that happen there. And I mean, you have the ranged casters that probably have the easiest time. Doesn't have really to worry about that much. But then you have the healers. There's things so many things we have to watch out for. It's keeping the group safe. It's if people are in range, where are you standing? Are you standing close enough so you can get the people you want to get healed? Then there's all the thing with dispelling magic and all that fun stuff, which is also range based. So yeah, I think some bosses, obviously there are things you have to think about as a ranged caster or healer as well. I mean, it's different from fight to fight, but generally, yeah, I think it's just experiencing it in another way than the rest of the people.
All right, you've made it through the interview, and now it's time for anger management. Each episode, I ask the interviewee to go through some of their angriest thoughts about World of Warcraft. So, Boradin, if I were to ask you what makes you angry about World of Warcraft, do you have something that you'd love to yell about right now?
Yes, please. We talked about earlier about the Lightwell talent and the Holy talent. Another talent like that you should never take is Spirit of Redemption. Yes. I see so many people who takes this talent and it's just another 4 seconds of healing after you die. I mean, it's not that good, and you have to sacrifice getting another helpful talent in the other tree, or if you're missing something in the holy tree. I mean, it's not worth it. Please don't use it. It's not good. It's never gonna be good, and it's not worth it.
Excellent. All right, take that, Spirit of Redemption. And with that done, now it's time for the hot seat. Each episode, I put the interviewee on the hot seat and ask them a few fun hypothetical questions about the game. So, a holy priest, a holy paladin, and a resto druid walk into a bar. Who gets the girl and why?
Wow. Who gets the girl? I would want to go for the obvious answer, which is the holy priest.
But something's holding you back.
Yeah, I mean, you could just use mind control. That's very good. Very good. A bit of thinking outside the box, a bit risque. Maybe the mind control, you could convince the girl to allow you to buy her a drink. Yeah, I mean, I didn't want to go that route because, some people might take offense to that, but there we go, I did it.
No, I understand. It can still be PC within a way, I understand. Now, how about this? You're familiar, obviously, with the game Fuck, Marry, Kill. How about that?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I'm going to give you 3 priest abilities. Fuck, Marry, or Kill. Holy Nova, Greater Heal, and Flash Heal.
Oh, God, that's so hard because I love them all, my babies. God, I think I have to say I'd have to kill Holy Nova.
Okay.
I love you, but I still, it's so painful. What are you doing to me, Josh? I'd have to marry Flash Heal and fuck Greater Heal.
Interesting. Okay, I thought you might have married Greater Heal. There you go. Very interesting. Now,
I mean, I love them all, but I mean, they're both good. I mean, Flash Heal is really good for DPS targets to get them. It's very mana efficient. Greater Heal is a bit clunkier, longer cast, but it's still so good. I couldn't decide. I wanted to marry them all three of them.
All right, moving on. If you could heal yourself of any real-life condition, such as something like snoring or bad breath or something like that, what would it be?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Can you heal yourself through depression? Is that a thing?
Yeah, absolutely. If that's what you'd like to do, let's absolve you of that.
Yeah, sure. Let's get rid of that.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. I think that's a great start for sure. Now, moving on to this one. And keeping this one, and now that we've healed you of the depression, keeping it as safe for work as we can with this answer, and this is flowing on from what we said before, if you could mind control any person in real life, who would it be, and what would you have them do?
Oh, God. Anyone. That is a tough question. There is actually a lot of people I would like to mind control. No, not those reasons. Can you have mind out the gutter people? I'd probably mind control Ryan Reynolds.
Okay, and what would you have Ryan Reynolds do?
I would just take him for lunch and just talk to him and talk about his career and how he became such a good actor. Yeah, I'd probably do that.
All right.
Take him for lunch.
Steal him for the day. And you're a big Ryan Reynolds fan, are you?
I like him a lot, yeah.
Fantastic. Excellent.
He's talented. I mean, there's no two ways about that.
No, I think that's a good way to go. I'm surprised. I thought some people might be sitting at home going, you know what? I'd mind control Mike Morhaime and get him to release classic sooner or something like that. Oh, yeah,
that's true. That's true. God damn it. Why didn't I think about that?
Okay. What's the meanest thing that you've ever done in the game?
Ooh. It's hard because I'm usually not a mean person. I try so hard not to be mean, but I'm probably going to sound so lame. When I was leveling, I've been questing, killing mobs, and someone would ask for an invite and I wouldn't invite them. I would just kill the mob. That's probably the most mean thing I've done, I think. Yeah,
I would say we've probably all been there. Do you have a proudest in-game moment?
Absolutely. One of my proudest moments is getting the benediction, of course.
Mm-hmm.
There's no moment in game that triumphs that.
Okay.
And another proud moment is on my Warlock. I got my Rock Fury bracers after a long time. But that's beside the point.
Do you have a most embarrassing in-game moment?
Oh, I can't think about anything but one thing. And that's the thing I mentioned in the benediction anathema / Rockdelar episode where I was power infusion spec for AQ40 and I by mistake used my power infusion macro on the Ray Leader and Guild Leader, which it caught a few eyebrows. It did. Yeah.
Okay. What was the moment that you realized you wanted to be perhaps a holy priest for good?
Out of all the healing classes I've played, which is... I've played Shaman, I've played Druid, I've played Priest. I have not played Paladin up to more than 38. But the Priest was by far the class most suited to my personal play style. And it was when I was leveling that I realized that I did like priests. But it wasn't until I started raiding like Blackling Lair with my priest that I really fell in love with the healing aspect of the priest.
Okay. Now, final question. Tell me why you, Boradin, are most excited for World of Warcraft Classic.
I mean, it's so awesome that we're getting this, and I can't wait to play with other people and not worrying about your characters and whether this is forever. I mean, you always, with these kind of private servers, you always kind of put your invested time into something that's not really 100% stable, and I can't wait to have a official product that Blizzard puts out to play.
Okay. Well, you made it through the interview, Boradin. Thank you so much again. Please plug yourself again. Where can people find you online?
Okay, so I stream very regularly on youtube.com/the_P. And yeah, I know, get your head out of the gutter. It's my initials.
Okay.
PP is my initials, yeah.
Excellent.
Have a laugh at that one.
All right. Thank you so much again for taking the time out for Countdown to Classic, Boradin. I know I enjoyed, obviously, your initial call with Venusta so much. I was glad that you mentioned to me that you had a lot of experience with Holy Priests. And this is our first, I think this is our first ever spec focus out of the way. I think we've just done classes so far. I do believe this is our first spec focus. So well done, and thank you so much again.
Thanks for having me.
And that's the interview done, and thank you so much again to Boradin for agreeing to come back on the show and take time out again for Countdown to Classic. I really do appreciate his effort, especially when you realize that there are many European fans eager to call into the show who are confident enough to talk World of Warcraft in a language that isn't their native tongue. So kudos to our European friends who are absolute WoW fanatics. And with that done, now it's time for Calling Countdown. Okay, we've got another caller on the line now, and who are we speaking with, and where in the world are you calling from?
Oh, you're speaking with Jeff, and I'm calling from Calgary, Alberta.
Excellent. Yet another Canadian listener. There's so many of you listening to the show. It's been fantastic.
Well, glad to be a part of it, that's for sure.
Excellent. Now, you contacted me through the week and said, hey, Josh, what gives? I'd love to hear more people talking about potential changes in the game and the pro changes crowd. And I said, absolutely, I would love for you to come on the show and talk about that. You're probably quite right. The show hasn't featured maybe enough of that kind of chat. And as I say in the show, I do encourage both sides of the coin to get their fair share of the content. So at times the show has absolutely gone in and battered for the changes crowd, but it's great to get another voice to actually come on and give, a bit of personality to the fact that yes, changes are very much so wanted by a number of people. So what can you tell us about that and your feelings about the changes that you might like to see in Classic?
Well, I think, everyone's recognized that if you got vanilla WoW patch 1.1, it's changed immensely when you look at 1.12. So I think one of the things that's really appealing to World of Warcraft is the fact that it's always evolving, it's always changing, and you have to, come up with new strategies or, specs become more viable and things like that. So I'd argue that, why wouldn't we want that as a community? Why wouldn't we want to have, the game that we know and love continue to make, say more specs viable? For example, you look at maybe Protection Paladins being able to, be the actual, maybe not as great as warriors, but be main tanks. Why don't we want to do that? PvP. why do we think that the current honor system that's basically an attendance grind is the best way to hand out loot? There's a lot of things that, way that development's changed over, the last 12 years or whatever, that I think it makes a lot of sense to, really take a look and say, let's keep the game and the soul of the game that we love the same, but let's make it better.
Now, do you think that the whole hashtag no changes movement has become somewhat of a meme at this point in time, in terms of a number of members of the community seem to feel that as time progresses and as we start to get very, very small drips and drabs of information from Blizzard, such as, the 1.12 Foundation and things like that, that a lot of people seem to think that some kind of change, whether it be small or big, is somewhat inevitable with the World of Warcraft Classic project. And so do you think that the people that clutch on to no changes are simply not living in reality, so to speak?
I do not disagree with you there. I mean, I would make the argument that the no changes crowd is just easy, right? It's easy to say that, I'm hashtag no changes because, everyone can't guess that. But if you ask, a person to the man, I don't think that they wouldn't say they'd want like a few things changed for sure. So I don't think it's realistic for us to believe that the game is going to be the same exactly like it was the day that it was, purchased in 2005 or 2006.
Now, I've self-identified as a, leaning no changes in the past, and I'd love to hear what you say in counter argument to these two main points that make me say that. I am no changes because of, one, as you say, it's easier, and as a selfish sort of, not hyper-skilled player, I know World of Warcraft as it was. If I have to learn something new, then I'm fucked. But also, secondly, I do appreciate this argument, and I know that Def Camp and Melderon put it in fantastic words when they first came on the show a couple of months ago, that, and I talked about it in the most recent episode of the show, talking about WoW as essentially a preservation project, as a piece of art, and we want it as it was because that's how we got it back then, and if we were playing it again, then you're essentially re-releasing an old game, and we want to be able to look at the Mona Lisa as it was, when it was painted, so to speak. So what would you have to say that... I think I appreciate where you're coming from, but when you say that change what we loved to make it better, how can they do that?
Well, I guess your point about, it being a preservation piece, yes, I agree that, going back and playing nostalgic, playing now, I mean, the private server community right now is pretty large, but how sustainable is that? How long can that last? I mean, I think there's a very few number of people, a very small minority, that are going to continue to, log on, create a new character, grind up to 60, and then rinse and repeat and do that over and over again, years upon years down the road here. And frankly, if you're going to go to Blizzard, who's, you're probably going to be paying a subscription now, what are you really getting besides, I'd say the moral and ethical decision to not play on a private server? If you're subscribing to a game, I mean, I kind of feel like there has to be development that continues with that game. And then to your point about, I don't want changes because I know this game already. I would argue that's part of the fun of the game, is the fact that at the end of the day, you don't know it's going to work. Maybe an arcane mage does work all of a sudden, or maybe whatever other class you want to say in there, or, different ways to, tank an instance, or different ways that, any sort of these mechanics work. Learning that, trying and failing, I think is, the fun of the game. Right now, if you look at Northdale, the private server that just launched, I've heard that already, Molten Core is being cleared, right? The thing's been out for 2.5 weeks or whatever, a month, I guess you could say. Is that just the way that we want it to always be?
And well, in mentioning retuning essentially, and that's something that's come up more recently. When we talk about retuning raids and dungeons, do you think that the no changes crowd are perhaps a little bit more receptive to changes than they might think? Because the kind of changes that might come with the game, even though they might not categorize them as quote-unquote changes, would help the project, because there seems to be more and more people, and I've mentioned this on the show, that the changes versus no changes thing, I think, has died down a lot more recently, and we're not getting sort of the loud vitriol that we got earlier. And part of the reason of that is we're getting a lot of the no changes crowd that sort of go, no changes, but just retune dungeons, but no changes. And then you get the next person saying, no changes, but buff paladins, but no changes otherwise. You know what I mean? There's always a but.
Yeah, no, well, you're 100% right. And I think, all of us are a little selfish, right? If you identify as a ret paladin and that's the class you love to play, of course you want your class to be, tuned better, or, maybe reach its full potential. So, and I think that's exactly what World of Warcraft's always been. I mean, I played back when, the game first kind of came out, not right at 1.1, but, there are major class imbalances that they had to fix. And again, I think that's the point of it is, for a while there, this class was trash or that one wasn't, but, they've spent all that time, the 2 years in that development of that game, trying to level the playing field as much as they could, or at least get everything to a place where it should be, right? Why wouldn't we want that to continue? And I do think that, the idea is, no one here wants looking for raid, or no one here wants, some of the other things that come out that are on the newer ones, right? I think the spirit of World of Warcraft is the idea that, we're all these little guys in this massive world and kind of working together to get things done. Once they kind of took that piece out of there, I'd say that's when it kind of really lost its personality, its flavor, to me at least, right? And I think that's why a lot of people talk about the original trilogy, right? Before you could just kind of, just queue up for looking for raid and just join with just a bunch of people, and they were basically disposable. And that's kind of the real sense of community to me is what I think matters the most.
Now, do you classify that retuning of dungeons and raids as a change? Would you say to people, that's definitely a change? If you categorize it as anything else, you're being a little bit naive, that would drastically alter the game?
I mean, drastically alter it, maybe no, but yes, it's definitely a change. Would you not agree?
No, I agree. I think it is. I think, I highlighted it on a recent episode saying that some people, the fun of it is the nomenclature that comes with it now going, oh no, if they retune dungeons, it's an adjustment or a tweak or a slight modification. It's not a change per se, because it helps the argument.
Well, it's funny because I was listening to you, well, not your most recent one now because you just were recording one, but the whole talk about quality of life that one of the users submitted there, and I couldn't agree more. It's, linked flight pass is a quality of life. That wasn't in the original. Who's fighting and kicking and screaming to, keep that, that inconvenience, right? So, I think that there is a certain level of things that just make sense to, tweak or alter just to make it so that the game's more enjoyable for everyone without, again, changing it completely, right? Minor changes. I'm in the minor change squad. That's what we'll say.
Got it. And as you say, on that note, sort of some of the things that come up often is the argument about add-ons. And this is something that many people get quite passionate about in terms of, well, let's say the add-on community develops with World of Warcraft Classic, and now all of a sudden we get all these quality of life options that come by way of add-ons. And, 80% of the population uses this particular add-on, which makes this thing so much easier. Why wouldn't Blizzard just implement it officially and things like that? And it's a whole hairy sort of topic and things like that in terms of, don't give us quality life, we don't want it, but we'll go out and get it on our own, if you know what I mean.
Well, 100%. I mean, you look at things like deadly boss mods. I remember when I first was raiding, if you didn't have that, you were not invited, right? And what's it do? It puts a giant alert up when whatever boss is going to do some sort of thing that you're a response to. Is that, is that the way that the game's intended to be played?
What would you say is the most outrageous change that you would love to see in Classic?
I think retuning the whole PvP system. I was actually kind of thinking about this today a bit. Was one of the other games that Blizzard has right now is Overwatch, and you look at the way that they do skill rating for ranked matches there compared to what you do right now in World of Warcraft for just basically farming honor. Right? Having some sort of, statistic driven, how well did you perform in each match, maybe kind of against other people in your same class or baseline, and, wins versus losses and something like that. And that's how you decide who gets, what rank within it, within WoW, instead of it being just, well, I farmed the most honor kills, so now I'm high warlord or whatever else. I think that's kind of something that I think would be really cool, and something that, completely changes, PvP, but I would say for the better.
Okay, and that's something that I do see, obviously, a lot of us come across quite often. And again, we talk about kind of the odd nature in which we hold no changes close to our chest, when we all say, people who are part of the no changes crowd go, no changes, but yes, the PvP system fucking sucked. A lot of people do say that. Don't get me wrong. I know there are people that do enjoy it and do have a special place for it in their hearts. But it's funny because you talk about that system, and again, we get back to, don't touch a thing in this game. But if you want to tweak the PvP system, I probably would take a look at it. Yeah,
of course. Or, if you're going to throw in some more instances at the end of the game, I was thinking about too, one of the things that everyone loved in retail was the AQ war effort, right? Would it not be cool to have something like that again? Is that, something that's completely new? I know that power creep is a big concern or whatnot, but, I think that there's still some ways that you could, introduce some more end game content, over time that gets developed that would also be, of interest. And I know, of course, then that's the whole, version 1.13 versus, going to Burning Crusade. And, that's a whole nother can of worms, I'm sure. But, the fact that, you want to take this game and just leave it as a timepiece or whatever, I just think that, eventually people are just not going to play it. So if we can keep this world vibrant and, even graphics, why don't we want to update graphics? I don't understand things like that too. So to get off going too much of a tangent.
No. I get where you're coming from. And you mentioned something that obviously, it's a pretty big issue, and it's something that I've come to, as well as I think more and more about it, come around on. And that's this. We talk about no changes, and we talk about wanting to preserve the feeling of the original version of the game. But I think changes like retuning and changes like the items that you collect for the AQ war effort, if we were to change those items, if we were to retune dungeons, what you're actually doing and delivering by making those changes is, in my argument, in somewhat of a convoluted loop, if you come with me here, is that you're actually still not changing the game because you're re-delivering the experience. And it's all about the experience. What did we get back in the day? We got an AQ war effort dropped on us where they said, hey, guess what? This item, this item, this item, this item, and that item, go out and collect a shitload of them and you're going to be helping your faction. And we didn't know what they were going to be in advance. Now, we can do that again instead of just having everyone know what it's going to be and being like, well, I guess I better start, stocking up on this stuff. So you would deliver the same experience in terms of just dumping this information on us out of nowhere. In terms of retuning the dungeons, what were they? They were, back when the game was first released, difficult. So why wouldn't we re-deliver that difficulty level rather than just having us face roll everything? So if you sort of follow my logic there, that it's a necessary change that actually brings us back to no changes, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean. I agree completely. The whole dungeon piece, right? There's so much more you could do now with mechanics. My memory's a little foggy as far as what the Wrath of the Lich King Naxxramas was like, and I never really set foot in the vanilla one, right? But the fact that you kind of have that as kind of two separate paths, where it was the same area but just different mechanics, right? And you kind of had to relearn them, or is the same but different, just with some new technology, I'd say, probably underpinning it. So how is that not something that we'd want to do? How is it that we would not want to have, just straight, tank and spank fights for, a bunch of different bosses where, the only real thing is don't stand in the fire or don't get cleaved. Why not make us learn some new things? Why not make it so that, we're still keeping kind of the same, I'd say the still spirit of the game, but yeah, again, it's just, we got to learn all new things. And best in slot items is a whole nother piece of that as well too.
I still should say that I remain staunch as somewhat of an advocate for no changes in terms of retuning, just because of this. I didn't do it back in the day. I haven't raided before. I'll be doing it for the first time when Classic rolls around. So I can't see myself just face rolling content and being like, this is a fucking piece of piss, and just, I can't see a lot of guilds finding enough people to confidently stroll through Nax on a lazy Sunday or what have you. But if the numbers started to roll in, and if it was very disproportionate in the fact that, oh shit, 50% of guilds are not struggling with Nax, then I would be really for retuning.
Well, and I'd put it this way: is it not? I'll use Molten Core as an example. If you're a mage in Molten Core, you're essentially spamming Frostbolt, right? You're gonna do that for 4 hours. Is that the best experience that we can do for that class, for that one there? I mean, it's not so much the fact that I want to make it harder or easier by any means. I just want it to be something where, maybe we should look at the ways that we could make it a bit more dynamic and a bit more fun, right? We've theory crafted quite a bit to the current one, so everyone understands, this is the talent build you need to have. This is what you want to do. So, why doesn't it make sense to make it a bit different?
So when you say let's take it away from just the spam Frostbolt thing through something like Molten Core for mages, are you talking retuning or are you talking spec changes?
Well, I think obviously you're going to have to make Molten Core primarily resist fire 100%, right? So, does that mean that, Arcane maybe should be something that is somewhat viable? Maybe. Does it mean that maybe there should be, different mechanics for frost mages? I don't know, right? I mean, I think that those sorts of things are, things you can look at and try to figure out a way that, you're not going to do something completely different, right? But in the same sense, I mean, same thing with same thing with Warlocks, right? They just kind of spam Shadowbolt the entire time in Molten Core for the same reason. So, and maybe that's also, again, the byproduct of the limitation of the number of debuff slots. Like, there's a lot of things there that are, moving levers that you can play around with and adjust to make it so that, we're not all just falling into these cookie cutter specs, in my opinion. Again, I'm sure a lot of people right now are listening and saying, no, that's stupid. You don't know what you're talking about. Da, 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 da. That's fair. I mean, I can have my dumb opinion and you can have yours for sure.
Well, you've mentioned, obviously, somewhat tongue-in-cheek, the dumb opinion thing, and let's just put to rest this, that obviously there are incredibly sane people on both sides of the argument here. And my final question would be, because obviously you've done a really good job presenting your point here today, and one of the things that really pissed me off about what we've just been through is this whole, no changes versus changes, the World of Warcraft civil war, as I've referred to it. When there is a certain extent that you can take the changes argument without coming across as needing to be committed to an insane asylum. So what would you have to say to people who have, to this day, still a warped opinion of the changes crowd? How would you say the changes crowd should be perceived, and what is your goal?
Well, I think that at the end of the day, we all love this game and we're all passionate about it and we all want to play it. So, I think that there's a lot of common ground there. And I do think that it gets a little overblown as far as, this civil war, as you say, right? I think at the end of the day, we're all going to be getting it. We're all going to be playing it. We're all going to have a good time with it. But I think that, just staunchly saying that nothing should change and should be exactly the way it was. And, that's going to be, that's going to leave us content and happy. I think that's a little unrealistic, but in the same sense, there's a reason why we're not playing retail right now. And I think that that's kind of, that middle ground that we need to find is, we want a game that grows and evolves, but we also want to, maintain the same spirit. So, end of the day, we're all on the same side.
Absolutely. I completely agree. Now, what do you have to say to people who give you the hyperbolic knee-jerk reaction of, if you want changes, go play Legion? You know what? Again, that's their opinion. And, I think it's the simplest, easiest way to kind of respond, right? It's that whole, delete your account kind of response. It's like, sure, whatever. If that's the best you got for a retort, try thinking of a new one. Completely agree. All right. Well, thank you so much for calling in. I'm going to say that I say I lean no changes. I'll give you this one. I do want to change in World of Warcraft. Here's stop the presses, everyone. Scratch the record. Josh wants to change in World of Warcraft Classic, and this is what it is. I want to be good this time around. That's the change that I want. So, Hopefully it will happen. All right, Jeff, thank you so much for calling in. I really do appreciate it. And look, to be honest with you, I'd love to have you back on another time. If you think of another change that you'd love to champion for and can present, obviously, with as much intelligence as you've just spoken with here today, and I've got no doubt that you will, I'd love to have you back on.
Sounds great, Joshua. Yeah, thank you for having me on. And I guess, in Northdale, just hit me up with at Ilferno if you want to send me hate mail or whatnot. And I look forward to hearing it.
Excellent. Thanks, mate.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Okay, we've got another caller on the line now. And who are we speaking with and where in the world are you calling from?
Hey, this is Bosen. I'm calling from Kalmar in Sweden.
Excellent. Bosen, thank you so much for calling, and obviously a venerable member of the Countdown Council, so it's so nice to finally have you on the show. Now, you approached me and you said that you had a little bit of a Warcraft love story to share, and I love those. So is that right? That's something that you wanted to share with the listeners today?
Yeah, that's correct. I wanted to talk about my girlfriend, who actually, when we met, hated the game. But I have, over time, managed to convert her over to our side.
Excellent. Now, if you take us all the way back to the start, I should ask a few questions. How long have you been with your girlfriend?
We've been together for 7 years now.
Okay. And when you started dating, did she know that you were an avid gamer?
Yes, she knew that.
Okay. Did she game at all?
Yes, actually, she did.
Okay, fantastic. What kind of stuff was she playing when you started dating?
She was actually more of a console gamer. She grew up with consoles, so she was used to more like linear sort of games.
Hey, come on. Let's not throw shade at the console gamers. I love me a good console game, Boradin. Come on now.
I'm not throwing any shade at all. I enjoy console games too.
Excellent. All right. So the two of you have come together, and how is it that she didn't have a great love or maybe a dislike for World of Warcraft or anything, I should say Warcraft related?
Well, that's the interesting thing, because it was a discussion that popped up during our first year together. The topic simply came up, and she said that she really didn't like the game, and I asked her why. And it seemed like she didn't really have any good arguments for why. So we just talked a bit more about it, and she seemed to have been very influenced by, the early teenage years nerd stigma, that if you have nerd interests, you're a social outcast and have no life. And even so when it comes to or even more so when it comes to World of Warcraft, because people know that it's a game that takes a lot of your time. So it's almost like you're a nerd, that's a little bit of a social outcast. You're a World of Warcraft nerd, that's even worse. That's the impression she had gotten from her time at school.
So was she surprised that you were into World of Warcraft? Did you not come across as the kind of person that might be into that kind of thing?
I'm not sure. I guess she just didn't really think much about it, and she didn't really seem to mind it at all either, that I was playing the game. But since I am still such a very avid fan of the series, both the game and the whole franchise, I just wanted to get her to understand why I enjoy the game so much. I have a tendency to try and get people to play the games that I enjoy.
Okay, so let's go back to that moment. It might have been roughly 6 years ago. I know you say you've been dating for 7 years, and it was about a year into it where she divulged that she wasn't really too crash hot on the thought of, World of Warcraft. Now, Going back to that moment, did you instantly craftily devise a plan, whether it was a one quick fell swoop or maybe you're a bit more of a slow burn kind of guy, a long con? Did you come up with the plan? There's like, I'm going to win her over to this game.
No, I guess it was right then. It was more of the heat of the moment in the whole discussion of why she dislikes the game. I tried to come up with just counterpoints and why the game is so enjoyable and the whole social aspect. And she sort of got to not hating the game, but she still didn't really see the appeal since she hadn't experienced that kind of game before. And she even told me that she did try out the game once. That was before we had met, and she tried it out all on her own without any helping hand or any guide. So she would just play the game, got lost, and didn't enjoy it at all.
Okay, so sorry, keep going.
No, your turn.
Okay, no worries. So what I was going to say was, in knowing that she had a little bit of disdain for World of Warcraft and you loving it so much, going back to that moment all those years ago, did you try to hide your World of Warcraft play a little bit, or were you out in the open about it?
I didn't really try to hide it. I have a lot of friends who also play the game. So when we all hang out, discussion of the game usually pops up. And I tried simply to keep it down a bit so she wouldn't get too bored, since she couldn't really participate that much into the discussion. But the funny thing is about those times when me and my friends all talked about the game and she was there, she was actually listening. She wasn't ignoring the conversation, and she picked up on few details like characters we like to talk about and whatnot, and that actually began to spark her interest.
Fantastic. Well, it's good that you never went through those awkward moments around the house where, like, you know, you had to maybe lock yourself in a room for a little while and try and hide the fact that you were playing the game. You avoided the bit where she knocks on the door and says, Borzin, what are you doing? Masturbating furiously. Go away. Come back in 2 hours.
Yeah, that wasn't an issue. She didn't mind that I played the game at all.
Very good. So when you started to notice that she was picking up on these conversations and showing a bit of interest, did you start to sort of maybe drop a few hints or feed her more information about the game to try and maybe get her to possibly try playing it herself one day?
Well, yeah, we started discussing lore, actually, because it was no doubt the thing that caught her interest first, since it has so many interesting characters and whatnot, with a lot of development. So I just told her a few stories from the game, and she thought it sounded really, really good. But it still wasn't enough just to get her to play the game or whatever. That's the funny thing. The point of her interest really growing more and more was when I introduced her to another Blizzard game, namely Hearthstone, which was not the game that I expected would really make her interest expand that much on the Warcraft franchise.
You mentioned that she started to show an interest in the lore. And it's funny because that makes me recall a phone call that obviously I took a few weeks ago on the show with GR's girlfriend, who a lot of listeners enjoyed that call, obviously with someone who had never played the game before but was about to start in the near future. And I do believe, I hope I'm not mistaken in this recollection, that she mentioned that it was the lore as well for her that started to lure her into this, game and thinking that the stories were really cool. It had a great narrative, some interesting characters, and that's what made her consider jumping into the World of Warcraft. So she got into Hearthstone. Now, when you started playing Hearthstone with her, now that's what happened, is it? You started to play together?
Yeah, I introduced her to the game, but it didn't take long until she played it all by herself a lot.
Excellent. So at what stage did she start to get good enough that you started to sweat?
Do we really need to get into that?
Yeah, has she beaten you?
Yeah, of course.
Excellent.
Of course.
Okay. Would you get feisty around the house and start to talk smack to each other?
No. Not over Hearthstone, at least. Or maybe perhaps a few times. You know,
Sorry, which one?
RNG and all that.
Which one did you say you would talk smack about?
Yeah, probably a little bit over Hearthstone.
And what was the other one that you said?
Well, just some games in general.
Oh, okay, games in general.
We can get a bit heated about games.
Excellent. Okay, so I won't make you divulge any private stories about anything that might have happened over Hearthstone, but did it start to get competitive to the point that you were glad you had someone around the house you could have a great, fun bit of a rivalry with?
Well, yeah, but I didn't really take Hearthstone that seriously. It's always been a sort of fun, casual game to play around with, but I didn't spend all too much time into it. I think she spent plenty of more time in that game than I have. But it surely helped to spark her interest in the franchise. Since when the whole solo adventures, we're releasing the next Ramas expansion pack for Hearthstone. They introduced the bosses and stuff, and they had their unique quotes and had some dialogue, and that really got her interest going. She started to ask about those places and those characters, and I got to spout lore at her, and she thought it was really interesting. That's really when she wanted to know even more than what just talking could do. She wanted to experience it more.
Okay, so the next obvious step from here is, when are you going to pop the big question and say to her, will you make me the happiest man alive and play World of Warcraft with me?
Well, fast forward a couple of years, and we can say that nowadays, it was probably just a couple of months ago, I managed to convince her to try playing on a vanilla server with me. And she just straight up accepted, no doubts. She had some expectations because she's heard us talk about how vanilla was back in the day and how much of a time sink it is and all that. But she was patient, and we played quite a bit, and she enjoys it a lot.
Fantastic. That's great. The couple that games together stays together. The couple that World of Warcraft's together stays together. So it's a happy ending.
Yeah, it's a very happy ending. I'm really happy that she's enjoying herself. I was terrified that she was going to be bored because of the slow pace, but she finds it fun so far.
Excellent. Out of interest, what did she roll?
She's rolling Undead Mage.
Fantastic. Excellent. All right. Well, look, I should ask. I've been avoiding the question the whole time. And please do tell me if it's not the case. What's her name? Are you comfortable with saying what her name is?
Felicia.
Felicia. All right. Well, best of luck to you and Felicia, Boradin. Do you want to give her a quick shout out now?
Hi.
Very good. I'm sure you might even be listening to this later down the track together, and she'll be looking at you going, really? That's the shout out?
Yeah, probably.
Excellent. All right. Well, best of luck to you and Felicia going forward, Boradin, and I wish you great luck with all your World of Warcraft adventures together as a couple in the future.
Thank you very much, Josh. And thank you for having me.
Well, that's Calling Countdown, and that's the show for the day, everybody. I really hope you've enjoyed Interview Week. It may not be the last time we do that here, but we'll see how we go. But just before I let you go, I just want to shout out to the members of the Countdown Council, whom I call every week for input on where the show should head in the week to come. So shout out to Boradin, Raidmar, Camp Sowen, Palfurus, Permadrunk, Rarebit, Seven Winters, Tsunami, The Anton, Wilson Mar, and Valaco. Thank you so much for your phenomenal support of the show. Countdown to Classic would not be the same without your support. And also, a big thank you to supporters Hurlbert, Good Kisser, Myrtlebanks, and Purgatos81 as always. Anyway, thanks for listening, everyone. I shall see you again on Monday for a really interesting interview all about hardcore raiding with AK, the guild leader of Grizzly, a well-known private server hardcore raiding progression guild. And AK was fantastic in his time with me, and I do look forward to bringing you that chat soon. But I look forward to seeing you all then. Just a friendly reminder to please tune in to the Countdown to Classic page over at Twitch. That's twitch.tv/Countdown to Classic on Friday and Saturday night. Firstly, for the great debate for Countdown to Classic, and secondly, for the Return of the Jedi live comedy commentary on the Saturday night. They're really going to be a lot of fun. I can't recommend joining me enough. I really think that everyone who comes by is going to have a blast, and I'm very excited to bring you those two special events. So I hope to see as many of you there as possible, and the VODs will be up after these dates, obviously. So I look forward to it. More fun to come. Have an amazing weekend, everyone.